Hello everybody, welcome to Abba's Hand, and today I will be showing you how to create an animator controller from scratch. It'll be simple but effective enough to give you a good base for a well-functioning character controller. Not only will I be showing you how to do it, but I'll also be explaining you what everything does so that you can understand the process. Let's get right into it. First of all, my scene. It's a very simple scene, just a terrain with trees in a forest, and you see right here I have a basic capsule with the mesh renderer turned off, and my character. His name is Andy the Fighter. I made him a prefab of the capsule just so that he would move around with the capsule, and here's the deal. This model is a scratch-made one, but it doesn't matter where you get the model or the animations from. As you can see, he has all of his already pre-made animations, but as long as you have a model with animations assigned to it, that's all you need, and I'm going to show you what you need in order to make him animate. The first thing I'm going to show you is the character controller and how to set it up, then I'll show you how to implement it. I don't know if it's going to show the window that opens when I right-click, but just right-click, go to Create, and then select Animator Controller. You can name it whatever you want. Since this is for Andy, I'm going to name it Andy Tutorial Animation Animator. I suggest naming it something similar to what it's for so that when you go to your character you can find the animator controller right near it, just to avoid any complicated stuff. Now I'm going to double click on this animator and you will see this window appear. You can drag over here, and here is what you want to do. What this is basically where you're going to put everything, all of your animations. So what you want to do is you want to go to Parameters, and you want to drag and drop any animations that you want your character to do. Me, I want him to do an idle animation, his run animation, and his jump animation right here. First, let me show you the parameters. Now, in order to make this work, my code is set up in a way that the running animation is triggered by a speed float. So I'm going to select float and just put in speed. The name in the code, or the name, if you're making a script to go with this, the name that you put in the code for the animations to trigger have to be the same as the ones in the parameter, or else it won't trigger them. And for the jump, I'm going to put is grounded. I made a mistake and put is grounded instead of grounded, but whatever, it can be whatever you need it to be. And here is the deal. If I want to go and transition to the run animation, you right click, hit make transition, and you can just put it on whatever animation you're doing. I typically disable this because this, what it does, is it controls how long the animation runs through its animating cycle before it goes to the next animation. So say I wanted to finish one animation before going to this one. What I would do is I would keep this checked and set this to 1. Fixed duration, I don't really know what it does, but I just typically uncheck it. And the transition duration basically controls how long it takes to transition from one animation to the other. So since this is 0.25, that's actually like 1/4 of a second, meaning it would take 1/4 of a second to go from idle to run for it to smoothly transition into that. But I don't need it to take that long, so I'm going to set it to 1/10 of a second, 0.1. The speed float, this is, you see right here where it says conditions, that's exactly what they are. According to my code, I want to go to the run animation whenever the speed float is greater than 0.1, aka how fast I'm moving, because real quick, let me show you. I made a movement script that basically refers to the speed up there, makes the character move at whatever I set that float to. 1, it'll move at a certain speed, 2 if it's even faster, and here is where the animator controller thing comes. I made it so that when I am going in any direction, it will trigger the speed float in this animator controller. If that float is higher than 0.1, it's going to trigger this right here, which will cause the run animation. And likewise, if I wanted to go back to idle, all I would need to do is this. First of all, I don't want this thing to cycle through the whole idle animation before it goes to the run animation. So I am just going to turn this off so that it can transition completely. And when I go to the idle animation, I don't want that either. So I'm just going to turn that off and turn that off, and I can transition back to idle in a tenth of a second. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it go back to idle if the speed is less than 0.1. Now for the jumping. This is controlled by a Boolean. The way Booleans work is basically, is it or is it not, enabled or disabled. In this case, the Boolean is am I grounded or am I not grounded is basically decided in this function whether or not I am attached to the ground, touching the ground. Here you can see if collision.collider, the collider on my character controller, is touching something that has that is tagged ground, which this thing isn't, in the code, it would qualify as is grounded is true, and in the animator controller, that's what it would trigger, causing me to go back to my idle in this scenario. If I'm not touching it, that means I'm in the air, so I'm going to turn that off, turn that to 0.1, and in this case, if I'm off the ground and not touching it, is grounded is false, but if I am touching the ground, then that means that I am grounded. So I would go back to idle if is grounded is true. And same thing for the running animation, but all I would do here is this. I would go to the jump under the same conditions. Hold on. But I would move away from it under different conditions. Like I would move from the jump to the run. Instead of me just going to the run if I am touching the ground, I would go to the run animation if I am both touching the ground, is grounded equals true, and if my speed is greater than 0.1. So now that this is set up, let's test it on the character. Now that I have created the character controller, I am going to find it, Andy tutorial, okay, right here. That's the one I just made. I'm going to go to him and I'm going to drag and drop this animator controller. Or another way you could do it is by assigning an animator to his character and then dragging and dropping this there, but it's just easier the first way. And then here's what you do. With my character, he requires a rigid body in order to function, and I am going to assign the player movement script to him. That's not it. This is it, okay. And now, I'm going to set this just to 0.2 so it can match the walk speed here. And now here's the deal. When you make a script that refers to an animator, what you need to do is up here, I put public animator anim. That way, when I go down and start doing stuff that has something to do with the animation, I can refer to this specific animator. For instance, if I pressed the jump button, like the space bar or a certain button on a controller, I would, anime is different from the anim I showed you, but it doesn't matter. Just as long as you're referring to an animator that you assign in the script, it don't matter what it's called. If I press the jump button, that animator I wrote down, I would put that, then I would write set bool because I'm triggering a boolean. Then in parentheses, I would put in quotation marks, dashing equals true. That's because in one of my other animator controllers, I added a dash animation, and on the controller, it's actually like if it was an Xbox controller, that would be where the X button was. It's not like an A button thing, so I use that button for dashing. But yes, if you want to refer to the animator controller under a certain action, you would just put if input.get button, get mouse, or whatever you're pressing down, jump, or whatever other button you're hitting. Then you would refer to the animator, refer to that bool, and then dashing, and if it's a float, you would instead put anim or whatever dot set float speed, and then I guess you would assign that in a way that would work with movement. Whatever your movement code is, if you know how to integrate that, then that's good. And now the last thing we need to do is just drag and drop the character into these animator sections, because that will trigger all of those animations. First of all, I'm going to grab the ground and I'm going to actually tag it as ground. If you don't have the tag, you can click on the thing that says tag, click on add tag, and then just create whatever tag you need to add that is in your script and animator. Just add that, and hold on real quick. I'm going to select that there capsule, and I'm going to make him unable to rotate in any improper directions. Okay, now that that's set up, let's go. He's idling in the animation just like we said. He doesn't run. Okay, that's not supposed to happen. The way my controller works actually has things that are meant to be set up in a way that allows everything to work, and I didn't add those. Say, and let's just pretend this here was an if statement. If collision dot whatever, and then I have a function down here, wrote another one under that, and then another one under that. If the thing up here does not trigger, like if something up here is not assigned, none of the ones below it will. So if something isn't happening in the code, just make sure that everything is set up and everything is properly assigned, just in case you might have missed something. So let me add the player model. Let me assign the rotation speed. Okay, now everything should technically be set up. Yes, I do indeed believe everything should be working now. He moves. Yes, he's facing the wrong direction because of unrelated issues. Don't worry, if this happens, just grab this character and put a negative behind that thing to completely reverse its orientation, and if it's going backwards, it'll flip to moving forwards. This shouldn't mess a lot of things up. In fact, it shouldn't mess anything up in a normal scenario, so don't worry about that. And now, at long last, the character is actually moving well. I know the frame rate is really low, but don't worry about that. And if I hit the jump button, hold on, I need to assign the jump force, so I'm actually moving off the ground. I'm going to set the ray distance to 2.1, even though instead 15 should be enough for the jump. Then I press the space bar. No, I press the scroll wheel, sorry. I'm jumping off the ground and the jump animation is triggered. So you see, this should be enough to have you a character that can run, that can jump, and it's actually even more versatile. If you use the same function that I did with the booleans to add other stuff, then this could actually be expanded even more. Let me give you a quick demonstration. Because I imagine unless you're just doing a very generic platformer that you're only going to be running and jumping. So let me show you how to actually make him do other stuff like attacking. Here I have got a kicking animation. This is part of a combo attack, so it's going to probably look funny when it's triggered, but don't worry about that. I'm going to add a boolean that says hammering, because that is a boolean that I put into my code. If I hit a certain button, trigger this bool, and then what I would do is I would go to idle, make a transition here, disable this, and say if hammering is true, go here. Then I'm going to go back to idle, and this time I'm going to keep this checked and set that to 1 because I don't want to go back to idle until the full action is completed. Only when the full kick animation is done do I go back to idle, and just do that when hammering is false. You could do the same thing with the run, or if you want to, but I'm just going to leave it at idle. And now, if I press the right button, you see that little motion there. I know it looked kind of funny, but if you squint, you could see he's actually kicking. And now, if you combine that with animation events, which if you want me to cover that, you could let me know in the comments. you can physically hurt enemies, and, well, yeah. That is how to make an animator from scratch in Unity. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Please leave a comment if this was helpful, or if you have any questions, please like and subscribe and hit that bell, and maybe share this video. But even if you don't, I appreciate you watching my videos. Thank you, and have an awesome day. Goodbye, and happy game making. This is his way of waving goodbye.